Joining me now, Josh Simons, Director of the think tank Labour Together. Josh, good evening.
Good evening, Kate.
Your reaction to those scenes that you've seen today, the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, has apologised. What do you think?
Well, today's been really another day of farce in Parliament. Really only one thing matters. Today, the House of Commons voted for an immediate ceasefire, for the release of hostages, and for international aid to be allowed to flow into Gaza. Everything else, in a sense, is kind of parliamentary theatrics. I mean, one thing strikes me about this.
The House of Commons did not vote on any of that. It was just waved through. There was no vote.
My understanding is that the Labour amendment has now been passed by the House of Commons.
But it's been waved through without a vote.
Sure, but waved through, my understanding is that waved through means that the House of Commons has now effectively authorised the Labour amendment to the opposition day motion, which means the House of Commons supports an immediate ceasefire, the cessation of hostilities, and crucially, the return of hostages. And I think that really what this looks like once again is a parliament that is tired. It's run out of roads. It's obsessing over itself. And really, we need a refresh. We need a new parliament, a general election, and what Britain needs above all else is a new government.
Thank you. OK, all right. Let's talk about the actions of Lindsay Hoyle specifically. We understand that Keir Starmer went in to speak to Lindsay Hoyle before the decision was made on Labour's amendment. The SNP did not get that privilege. And I just wonder whether that fanned the flames. There's been accusations of bias, bring back Burko's sarcastic calls from the House floor today. What is your position on Lindsay Hoyle? Should he face some sort of investigation or, further assessment on this?
I think that calmer heads really need to prevail in this moment. I think the focus on Lindsay Hoyle, as I think a government minister tweeted or told a journalist in the last hour or two, is really a distraction from the fact that today the Conservative Party, the Scottish National Party, tried to play party politics with a really important, difficult, complicated moral issue, and it blew up in their faces. It backfired. And now, they look a bit like toddlers throwing their toys out the pram and trying to blame the Speaker of the Parliament. And I think there's something quite unpleasant about that. And I think really we should move beyond the focus on the Speaker and get back to what is the really important question here, which is what should we do about a really difficult humanitarian disaster that is unfolding in Gaza right now?
Look, I mean, in terms of sort of where this sits, the chaos in the House, I think, will probably overrule, even if it is a symbolic backing by notion of it being nodded through Labour's amendment. I think there are still, questions to be asked, really, about where everyone stands on this, and the fact that, Labour's position is out of kilter with what the United States say they want, and they've got a much bigger part to play in this than us. They're out of kilter with what the government wants as well. There are various arguments on either side. What should Labour be doing now? What is Labour's next move on this? I think it's safe to say that the SNP, if they've sort of lost out largely today, maybe they have had a small win in forcing Labour to concrete in their position on a ceasefire in Gaza. That is perhaps the only small win for the SNP today. But where do Labour go from here?
Well, I think what would be really impressive, surprising and unlikely for that reason, but what would be impressive is if the House could actually come together broadly, at least as a majority on a vote. It is true that there is a difference between the Scottish National Party's position at the moment and Labour's position at the moment. And the crucial difference between the two is that Labour think it's completely vital to make any ceasefire conditional on the release of hostages and the cessation of hostilities by what is a terrorist organisation. The Scottish National Party's motion did not specify that. And that is why Keir Starmer, as a prospective candidate to be Prime Minister of this country, was not willing for Labour to support the Scottish National Party's motion. Now, that conditionality, saying, actually, we think there needs to be an immediate ceasefire, but it has to involve the return of hostages, that is actually very, very close to the government's position. And I think it would be entirely possible for the entire House to unite around a position that says we need a ceasefire now and we need the return of hostages. And that is what they should do as grown-up politicians of this country.
But they're never going to unite around Labour's position, are they? The government just will not do that. They will find a way to make it their own.